In the year 2162, the Vault Dweller is exiled from Vault 13 and finds their way north to Oregon, from California to Oregon, to the town of Arroyo, which they find the town of Arroyo. What was once a tribal village would become a major settlement after the Chosen One finds the GECK in the year 2242. So there's a bit of a discrepancy that I couldn't find anything directly on the wiki, and I get all of my lore off of fallout.fandom.com. I couldn't find anything on the wiki that said directly that Arroyo is NCR territory. It would make sense that they are because of Vault 13 and everything, and just Shady Sands. Aradesh leaves Shady Sands to go look for Vault 13 and the Vault Dweller, and he dies while looking. So it would make sense to me that if Arroyo was found, Arroyo at some point would become part of NCR territory. The only problem with it is it's so far north. If I remember correctly, I couldn't find an exact pinpoint of it, but it's in Oregon. It's like the Portland area. So it's right next to Washington. So it's very, very high up. It's not said that it is NCR land, but because it's such a grown settlement, it's a settlement that has so much extra agriculture and extra time and influence put into it because it's an older settlement. It's not as old as Shady Sands, but Arroyo has a GECK, as I'll get into. It wouldn't surprise me if they're like a territory, like how the U.S. is Puerto Rico, where Puerto Rico gets a lot of the U.S.'s benefits, like unemployment. I'm pretty sure like Medicaid, welfare, stuff that the U.S. offers. If you're a Puerto Rican citizen, you have access to that because of it being a territory. So I wouldn't be surprised if Arroyo is played kind of in the same realm as the U.S. has Puerto Rico. May of 2162, the Vault Dweller defeats the Master and his army, only to be kicked out by Overseer Jackarin. So the other Dwellers will not follow in their footsteps, but a small group from Vault 13 did leave the vault in search of the original Dweller after hearing what he did and what had happened to him. They finally came in contact with the Vault Dweller, and without the Vault Dweller's help, the Dwellers that left Vault 13 would have died because they had no real sense of the world outside of their vault. They would then later go north several hundred miles away from where Vault 13 is, and they would find the town of Arroyo, and the construction of it would complete by the August 18th, 2167. So about 5 years after all of this happens, the town of Arroyo is complete and it is in a livable state. Now the word Arroyo comes from the Spanish word for brook, usually a dry creek bed or a gulch that fills with water after heavy rains. And if you look at what Arroyo looks like, you can see that there is a gulch, there is a cliff, there is a chasm that is there that very much could fill up with something. It's not as deep as like a creek, it's much deeper than a creek. A creek is very shallow, but very much the idea of that is there. At first, the village would send scouts to Vault 13, but slowly that came to an end. The Vault Dweller and their partner would eventually go on to lead. So what I think is really interesting about seeing how settlements develop in the Fallout universe is what branch of democracy, what branch of governments, what branch of leaderships you see, and it becomes an elder system where there's an elder and the elder has say. It's not a matriarchy, it's not a patriarchy, it's very much just this is the person in charge. It's originally the Vault Dweller and their spouse, it says, and it's left ambiguous because you could have played male or female character. You also could have had a male or female spouse. And Elder, when you start Fallout 2, is the daughter of the Vault Dweller. So maybe you couldn't have a same-sex couple, or maybe they just adopted. Maybe someone in the village was killed and they took the kid. It just says that the little girl is born. So, it's open for any sort of interpretation. Because of the Vault Dweller taking the reins and leading the village, they would teach the others all of the ways that they learned during their time trying to find the water chip, exploring outside of the vault after the game, defeating the Master's army, and they would teach the settlers of Arroyo hunting, farming, engineering, and warfare. By 2188, the Vault Dweller and their spouse would have a daughter, and this daughter would go on to be the settlement's elder, which I'll get into a little bit later. But when you start the game, the woman you speak to is this elder. She's the one who tells you about the prophecies, everything that was left behind, all of the stuff that you have to go fulfill being the Chosen One. Now, January 16th of 2208, the Vault Dweller would leave Arroyo, leaving their memoirs and their Vault 13 jumpsuit behind. Now, because of it being a tribal society, and things are written, things are spoken, but it's not kept in the same exact way we would keep notes today, some people say the sky spirits took them, and others claim that it was just their time to move on. The village would look for the Vault Dweller for what they called a moon cycle, which is just about a month. If you really think about it, when the moon changes and looks like the same thing as it did a month ago. But after that, they decided to stop looking for the Vault Dweller. By February of 2208, the Vault Dweller's daughter begins training for the village elder. They studied in various sciences, mathematics, and weapon skills. By 2210, the Mystic test happens from, and I'm going to pronounce this wrong, but Hakyunin, a tribal member of the tribe of Arroyo. Inside of their garden, the soon-to-be elder takes several pots of hallucinogenic plants, running the temple trials to become the elder. She passed most of it because of her charm after her gun had jammed. She gave her feedback on it, and because of the way she felt about it, she thought this could be changed, that could be changed. They changed a lot of it because of her. 2 days after her trial run, she became the elder and was greatly respected for her wisdom and her steady hand on most matters. By March of 2221, the elder gives birth to the chosen one. No father is recorded, which I thought was interesting. I thought it was neat that there is just a historic figure who we don't know who one of their parents is, even though we could follow their lineage and see I don't have it written down, but there's somebody that you speak to in Arroyo that is technically your cousin. The Vault Dweller is your grandfather. You play as the grandchild of the character from the first game. By 2241, the worst farming season in years happens, killing many of the crops in the Brahmin. The elder reads an old hollow disc with a GECK advertisement and decides it was destined for the Vault Dweller's grandson or granddaughter to go find the GECK. Now, I never realized this until I recorded some footage beforehand, before doing this, that the intro video with the GECK is the advertisement they speak about. I never put two and two together, because when I read Holodisc, I assumed it was just text. I assumed that they could read here because of their descendants of Vault Dwellers. Vault Dwellers would know how to read. So I thought it was just that. But they show you this video that's an advertisement for the GECK saying your vault will have a GECK inside of it. And I thought it was super neat. July 25th of 2241, the Chosen One takes their test in the Temple of Trials, and 2 days later is off to find the GECK. So behind me should be footage of the Temple Trials. It's a lot harder than it should be. When I ran through it, I had my fists, and then I found a spear, and when I had the spear, I was still only hitting the scorpions and the giant ants 30% of the time. And then you have to fight a man to death. Like, not to death, but you have to fight a man who you're friends with, who knows you by name. I named my character Scrimbo, and by the time you get to the end, you get the jumpsuit, the Vault 13 jumpsuit that is left to you, that is your destiny, that this is what you are supposed to have. July 20th of 2242, Arroyo is attacked by Enclave soldiers, all in power armor. They came via vertibirds, and they had energy weapons. This is something that this small little village has never seen before. They're not dumb. They don't speak great English, but they're not dumb. They can read, they can write, presumably. They know how to cultivate, they understand agriculture to an extent. They're not dumb. But when you see 15-foot men in tank suits with giant energy weapons, and the tank suits get out of giant metal birds, it's something you've never seen before. The Enclave comes to capture the villagers, take them to the Enclave oil rig to do tests on them. And after this, the Chosen One realizes that he has a new mission, and it is to save the people of his village. Now, there's two groups of people that were used for FEV experiments, and they were put into clean and unclean. And this is where the eugenics of the Enclave starts to show up. The clean ones, Vault 13 dwellers, untouched by radiation, and were more pure, quote-unquote pure, to see how a clean bloodline would be affected differently by FEV, and an unclean bloodline, Arroyo citizens, people that have been out in the sun, that have been dealing with background radiation. They're not just constantly inside of vaults making sure that they're fine, that they didn't get hit with massive amounts of cancer, of radiation, be it on purpose or on accident. And they're taken to be exposed to the FEV to see how someone that the Enclave already perceives as mutants, when you go against Frank Horrigan, he refers to you as a mutant because you come from the town, the settlement, the village of Arroyo. And it's, your people are about to be experimented on. The FEV is about to be experimented on your people to see how they react because they have a little bit of radiation in them. Radiation doesn't kill you, it kills your bloodline. This is how both populations would finally come back in contact with each other. Now, in the fall of 2242, the Chosen One would destroy the oil rig and set the remnants of their people free, and they would return to Arroyo with the holy GECK. So the GECK, the flask from Vault 13, are all considered holy items. They're considered items with some sort of a reverence. They have a mystic, they have a special power to them because of the way the people of Arroyo conduct themselves. They very much believe that the artifacts that have been left behind for a reason, and because they know they come from Vault 13, but they're not quite sure where that is, it's considered an Eden, in a sense. A Mesopotamia, if you will. It's a place where we all came from. It's a pinpoint location of this is where it all starts from. Some of the other members that were on the oil rig, like I said, were Vault 13 members, and because they're so far away from Vault 13, they decide they're going to come back to Arroyo, because it's the two cultures finally meeting once again, and now it can be a prosperous city. Behind me real quick, I'll put a picture up of what Arroyo looks like once it has the GECK. That's insane that there's like real-ass buildings and electricity. I mean, it could be candles, but still, that they have like real-ass buildings and structures. Now, the community gets combined, and from the Vault 13 group, you have technical know-how and survival skills from the Arroyo people, and together they build a stronger, more adept society. The Chosen One then becomes an elder and does that for many, many years. Now, what I thought was super interesting is the only time Arroyo is ever mentioned in the games outside of Fallout 2 is one quick one-off sentence in Fallout New Vegas. If you talk to Emily Ortal, who is a follower of the Apocalypse, the courier can ask, "How long have you been with the followers?" And Emily Ortal will say, this is a partial quote, "About 5 years. I have family back in Arroyo. But this is where all of the good work is being done, so to speak." That's it. That is the only reference I could find outside of Fallout 2 to one of the most important settlements in the entire series. A settlement that, maybe we don't have to see because it's already fully built, because it's back to what it really needs to be. There's not much to explore if what we have to explore is just a settlement-ass settlement that has maybe working roads and working vehicles. Maybe we don't need to see that, but we have to see everything else. We have to see where civilization has yet to succeed the way it has in the past. The tribal nature, this is just a fun fact for you, the tribal nature of Aurora's inspiration comes from the novel Earth Abides from 1949 by George R. Stewart. The main character survives an apocalyptic event and lives in a tribal society where they revere everything from the old world as important. It is some sort of important artifact from a bygone era. That's pretty much everything I have on Arroyo, but I want to go over some of the more important structures that they have. Arroyo has the Temple of Trials, where you go to see who you are, to test your abilities, and also at the end of it where they keep the Vault 13 jumpsuit. The village where people live, the hunting grounds, there's small bits of gecko, xanderroot, brockflower, healing powder. It's hunting grounds. I mean, it kind of speaks for itself. There's the canyon, which is just a small place, a small area with a couple of tents. That is the canyon that you cross through with the bridge. And then there's a destroyed bridge as well, which shows up later once you have the GECK. Arroyo is one of the most important settlements in the entirety of the series. I would argue Shady Sands might be a little more important, but Arroyo is one of those that I feel like might be second, especially if they have like a functioning government, a functioning economy, a functioning way of life. And it's successful and it's small, I'm going to say it's the second. It was fun to cover Fallout 2. I haven't done any of the original Fallouts in a very long time, but I knew I could do this one. And I hope you've enjoyed, because that is this week's lore. Hey, wasn't that clip great? Wasn't that a whole lot of fun? If you like that, consider listening to the whole podcast of Atomic Radio Hour. We do Fallout lore, but we also do a ton of other fun stuff. On screen right now are a couple of names that I have to thank. These fine folks are part of our Patreon. From the $1 tier to the $10 tier, every single week, your voice is heard when I ask a poll concerning the lore. And also at the $10 tier, you can watch the podcast episodes get recorded live. I want to thank these fine folks. I love you, each and every one of you. Thanks for checking us out. Stay tuned for a recommendation for what I think you should watch or YouTube thinks you should watch. And also, subscribe to my channel. Throw it a like. Give it a comment. See you guys soon. Love you.